Donald Trump can run from the Epstein files, but he cannot hide from the ghost of his former best friend forever. And that pressure is escalating this week with the breaking news of a Ghislaine Maxwell cover-up and a very important book release that happens tomorrow. And I have it all for you next in this episode of...
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes, Donald, we are. Let's begin with the book that is hitting the shelves tomorrow that will propel the Trump-Epstein bond back into the headlines. Here's co-author Amy Wallace speaking for victim Virginia Roberts-Giuffre, who sadly took her own life. Watch as she asks the questions for all victims. Why hasn't Trump done something? Why hasn't he kept the promise he made to release the files?
Did she mention President Trump at all in your discussion?
Oh, she absolutely did. I was in Australia in October, weeks before the presidential election. She was a huge Trump fan. Two reasons for that. One, she had met Trump on numerous occasions because she worked at Mar-a-Lago Spa in Florida, which he owns, and her father also worked there and knew Trump pretty well. So she was introduced to Trump. He was kind to her. The second reason she wanted Trump to be president was because he campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. And she was excited about that. So, yes, we talked about Trump a lot.
As a crusader to release the Epstein files, in that sense.
She was very excited that he had made that one of the main planks of his campaign. And she felt validated by it.
So Nobody's Girl is one of those books that's going to stay with you long after you close it. This is Virginia Roberts-Giuffre's memoir, The Woman Who Stood Up to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and in doing so helped bring them down. She's also the woman in that photo with Prince Andrew, the one that toppled his reputation. But here's the thing. This isn't just a headline recap. It's her story in her words. She talks about her childhood abuse, how she was pulled into Epstein's orbit as a teenager, and how she eventually found the courage to escape at 19. And then, instead of staying silent, she rebuilt her life and became a fierce advocate for justice. It's raw, it's devastating, and honestly, it's also inspiring because even in the darkest parts, her strength comes through. Knowing she wrote this before her passing in 2025 makes it feel even more urgent, like she wanted her voice to outlive her. Now, this isn't an easy read. There are graphic accounts of abuse, and it'll break your heart more than once. But if you want the truth behind the headlines, told by the woman at the center of it all, this memoir delivers that and more.
Please look for more reports from Occupy Democrats on the fallout from the book in the days to come. But meanwhile, let's revisit that photo and zoom into who's lurking in the background. That's Epstein's convicted accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, which brings us to today's breaking story from the Daily Beast. The headline reads, Prison is running massive Ghislaine Maxwell cover-up for Trump insider. Prison consultant Sam Mengel reveals on the Daily Beast podcast that a unique blackout is hushing up every detail about Ghislaine Maxwell,
who you will remember was sentenced to 20 years for sex trafficking after being Jeffrey Epstein's partner in literal crime. Let's get into it. Can you start by explaining to us how unusual it is for someone who's been sentenced, like Ghislaine Maxwell, to 20 years for sex trafficking is in essentially a camp, Bryan prison in Texas?
Sure. So in the Bureau of Prisons, there's something called a public safety factor. When someone is sentenced, or actually before they're sentenced, they do a pre-sentence report. And in that report, it lists their criminal history, if there's any violence, drug use, and specifically their charge. Based upon a public safety factor, they are designated. So there's a central office for the Bureau of Prisons in Grand Prairie, Texas, that takes every single incoming inmate and everyone that's currently in custody and determines where they should serve their time. There are times when people can be moved from one level of security to another. In the case of Ms. Maxwell, she had two public safety factors on her. One was the easy one to play with, which is the length of time remaining in her sentence. She had a 20-year sentence. In order to qualify for a camp or a minimum security facility, you have to have 10 years or less remaining on your sentence.
Wow.
I've had clients with 11 years, 12 years. Sometimes you can get that waived, and that is typically the easiest of the public safety factors to waive. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the hardest public safety factor to waive, and until now, I've never seen waived, which is a conviction for a sex crime.
Do you think she's going to stay there long, or do you think there's already been, as many people suspect, a deal and that in a few months she'll be quietly released?
I have to imagine that getting her to Bryant was the starting point to getting her out of custody, whether through commutation or pardon. It just seems to me that you don't move someone to that type of facility with this kind of protection and precautions if you're not overly concerned about her safety and what she has to say and offer. My guess, and purely speculation, is that at some point she will receive some form of clemency.
And where do you think that leaves the victims of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein?
Really upset. Not just the victims, the other inmates, anybody in the Bureau of Prisons that is serving time for any charge, yet alone a nonviolent charge that are there, and they see that she's going to get clemency. We help people with clemency all the time. We're very active in that space, but we would never accept a case when it comes to sexual act or charges at all. I think there's going to be quite a bit of animosity and anger. If you're a victim's family, I know if my daughter, I have a 30-year-old daughter, if she was the victim, God forbid, I can't tell you how angry I would be. The other inmates either have daughters, many of them have daughters that are of the same age as the daughters that Ms. Maxwell was convicted of abusing. Also, and this is a little bit more serious, many of the women in that facility were abused themselves.
It is shocking that the woman who helped Jeffrey Epstein traffic underage girls, who literally enabled the crimes that destroyed lives, will likely be set free, while at the same time no one associated with the many crimes that happened over 2 decades is even being pursued. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has weaponized the DOJ as a protective shield. I think there's only 2 things that can bring Trump down at this moment in time. First, his health and karma could conspire to take down the 79-year-old who continually appears to be on shaky ground. And second is Epstein, because it's the only thing that some Republicans have broken ranks with while they demand transparency themselves. Right now, it's an undercurrent, but it has the potential to be the tsunami that topples Trump. That's what I think, and now I want to know what you think. Please comment below, and let's continue to occupy democracy together.